fire, of course, between Vallabh Bhansali and Professor Srinivas Rangan. Professor Rangan is the Luxic Chair Professor of Strategy and Global Studies here at Babson College. He has also worked with Professor Michael Porter of Harvard Business School to advise the Indian government on the economic development policies to pursue in order to ensure national competitiveness after economic liberalization. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you my strategy professor, Srinivas Rangan.
Thank you very much. You've been very kind.
Thank you.
You know, I've been asked to introduce Mr. Vallabh Bhansali, my conversation partner today. When I started reading his bio, I realized what a wonderful person I'm going to introduce. Here is someone who was actually educated as a lawyer, trained as an accountant, and by profession, an investment banker. I thought that is achievement enough. Then I read a little bit more about him. Here's a person who's interested in economic development, finance, of course, behavioral sciences, religion, and culture. I said to myself, here's a Renaissance man, so it's not going to be easy to introduce him. But then I thought to myself, maybe not easy to introduce, but someone would be a pleasure to introduce. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Vallabh Bhansali. Please have a seat. You know, Mr. Bhansali, when I was asked to do this conversation with you, the topic being envisioning India as an economic superpower, I thought it's a great topic, easy to talk about. And then I went to one of my colleagues, who was also an economics professor, and who was at a prestigious university in this country, and who has been an observer of India for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, I'm going to be interviewing this gentleman from India. I'm going to talk about economic superpower, position of India, and things like that. And he started laughing. And started to play this role of the skunk here. And I immediately said, why are you laughing? He said, come on, Srini. We have been listening to the story of India being going to be great for a long time. I paused. What do you mean? Well, Nehru said about a tryst with destiny. I'm yet to see what destiny you have met. Indira Gandhi talked about eliminating poverty. I don't think you have done it yet. Rajiv Gandhi talked about incandescent high technology. Has it happened? Narasimha Rao promised reform, wave after wave. I'm yet to see them. And of course, then 10 years of scams, scandals, and corruption under Manmohan Singh. Tell me, what is it about superpower in economics that you are talking about, that you envision? What is it different this time? I said to myself, maybe I should pose it to you.
At the outset, let me thank Babson and for having me here and presenting me your toughest professor. So I understand when we have power cuts, how can we be a superpower? But think like this, that I firmly believe, Professor, that many times when we look at events, the immediate context or the person are given too much importance. There's a historicity to things that we sometimes miss, right? So we always plot a dot on multiple xi. So let me just give a little perspective and say that, if someone in great shape suddenly puts on, say, 40 kgs, right? And then you get into a slumber, and your life changes. It takes a long time to understand that this can change and how to change it. You have ups and downs. So I think India is one of those countries which was probably at its one of the most glorious countries in the world, and way back to 2,500, 600 years ago in the period of Mahavir and Buddha. And for 1,000 years, at least recorded history, India was a great country. And I'm not an ancientologist, so I don't like to think of all, but I'm just trying to put things in perspective. And then we had 1,000 years of decline. We had someone or the other fighting all the time. But after that 15th century, every century, the fight became more and more bitter, ending in the freedom struggle. So, I always wondered that why for such a long period of time, such a cultured, educated country did not have a renaissance, did not have a fight back. Renaissance means two things: fighting the decline and having the confidence to grow again. And we did not have that. And many of you from India, I don't know how many of you know this, that a renaissance of serious kind started to emerge in Bengal at the turn of the 19th century. That's when the British thought it necessary to break up Bengal, and we had the Bengal split, and it laid the foundation, or it further accelerated the fight of freedom. So you talked about Nehru and others. So there are two ways to look at it. One is someone who's not living in India. You said a friend here who was making fun of it, so I understand. But I don't know how many of you know that when India became independent and the Tryst with Destiny speech was given, the British laughed. They said, in 10 years' time, we're going to get this country back. Because there's a bunch of fools, and they have so much diversity, so many splits, that they will never be able to survive as a country, as a democracy. We overcome that. And then we had Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh, the duo. And to me, there was a trio, actually, Narayana Murthy, of the same time. And the Renaissance started to become more serious. Over the last 25 years, from 91 to 2016, this has played out dramatically. Inevitably, in all affairs, there are waves up and down. So we had a down wave probably over the last 10 years, and I don't think it was unalloyed bad. I don't like to think so, because that's how history works.
Okay.
And I think now we have come to a moment where more and more people are talking about it. And I think it needs examination. Therefore, I don't buy that point at all, because you cannot have a fixed point view, you cannot have a fixed benchmark of a country emerging from 1,000 years of decline. I think for the last 500 years, India has been having it, and the last 25 years, in sphere after sphere, India is making its mark, whether it is business, whether it is something like yoga, whether it is like literary awards. Indians are all over. We are winning in cricket also at last. So I think we are nearing our moment.
I understand. No, your argument about the long decline and our coming back. And you mentioned something about this moment. Tell me about the moment. What is this about this moment you think India is finally poised to take its place in the sun?
I wouldn't know about finally, as I said, and I like to have a historical perspective, but I do see this, that in all affairs of men, leadership plays a big, big role. And so, we have had very, very good leaders over the last 60, 70 years of independence, but we have somebody who has a unique combination. Someone who is coming with a track record, someone who is confident, someone who has a lot of energy, has shown innovation, and most importantly, the quality that I really look for in a leader is he's shrewd. So Mr. Narasimha Rao was shrewd, but he didn't have the energy or the confidence to last that long. Mr. Vajpayee was a great man, but I don't think we could put him in shrewd category. You can put Mahatma Gandhi in shrewd category. Modi is shrewd. And now let me give you some examples that I think all the other attributes I don't have to explain, but shrewdness is something which is so necessary, because politics is a power game, it's a competitive game, and you need to have it. Look what he's doing. He has taken a lot of the UPA agenda, but understood the agenda better and pushing it. Aadhaar was not his plan. Manrega was not his plan. The railway corridors was not his plan. But he's taken those plans and doing it. On the one hand, he is engaging with the rural India. He's talking directly to the common man, cutting out the cabinet, the colleagues, etc. He says, because I'm going to win elections through the common man. On the other hand, he's talking to the biggest and the most powerful people in the world. Everywhere he goes, he has endeared himself to those powers. So this understanding of, from the smallest man to the most powerful man, how do I engage with him? This is unusual.
Okay. But in a conversation outside, you mentioned something about how this man is finally moving India to a true market economy. And the true market economy is something which calls for at least three things, as economists would say. Property rights, the ability to have merit-based competition, not crony capitalism, and of course, finally, openness to international trade and investment.
Sure.
What's he doing in that area?
I think in one line, if I would say that he's changing the rules of business. First of all, crony capitalism out. No businessman in India likes to say he's close to anybody anymore, which is a big, big change that we have seen in India. And more fundamentally, by bringing in several measures, one of them was within the first 2 months, and I may sound like a spokesperson of the government, but I'm not, and I have a lot of other criticism that will come along, that he said, I will repeal 500 laws. That if you just get out of the way of Indians, they know how to do it. So the theory that he has been following, like not much unlike Narasimha Rao, where he said that, oh, get the hell out of Indians' way, they know what to do. And so he says, all right, let me declog the pipe and let me extend the pipe. So with these two phrases, you can probably explain everything that Narendra Modi is doing. So first let me repeal the laws. Over a period of time, I expect that 500 laws will be repealed. Bring in laws that better business and they hurt society. Never before we could imagine that so many businessmen are having to run from the law. Their property is being sold, the banks are after him. They recognize that, okay, we need to be more fair to the bankers and the lendees, so let's bring in a bankruptcy law. The bankruptcy law has been talked about for 25 years. It is likely to see the light of the day very soon. We bring in a real estate regulator. Real estate in a developing economy is one of the largest sectors, very, very important sector, but we didn't have a fair real estate practices. So we bring in a real estate law, and so on and so forth. So therefore, I mean, the startups have been given a break now, that for several years, there is no questions asked. Someone with the Aadhaar-based account, the Aadhaar-based account opening and Aadhaar-based direct business, direct subsidy transfers, the DBT, I think these are amazing things that he's doing. So the way the government functions, the way startups can function, the way business can function, so just change the rules of business. And if you just declog the pipe, the momentum and the buoyancy in Indian economy, in Indian people is so large that things will happen.
It's fascinating you should say that. Let me take a little bit further on this thing. You talked about how he's declogging the system. Okay? And at the same time, let's think about in terms of competition. Is in India, do we really have market-based competition yet? Because I remember Competition Commission, which Michael Porter Committee recommended, and it's taken so long for the Competition Commission even to operate. And tell me, are we really reaching a really merit-based competitive market field in India? Because many of the entrepreneurs who are ambitious here, they want to enter India, start businesses, and compete on merit. Is it feasible?
So I'll take this in two parts. Specifically on the CCI, or the Competition Commissioner, I think a lot has been done. I'm very happy to tell you that one of the companies I invested in, one of the most promising microfinance and a young bank, in one hearing, 2 days of the hearing, we got an order from them that you are clear. So I think CCI has built enough, competence, and the office is well established. On the other part of competition per se, government, within a few months of coming into power, realized what was the problem in the last 10 years. That we shied away from open markets. For example, we didn't want to auction things. So we found, first come, first served, and all kinds of methodology to, hand out licenses, hand out favors. That's gone. So the coal blocks got auctioned, telecom got auctioned. I think it's well established. Nobody goes to the government anywhere in the country expecting a non-market practice. It's all market practice. Once the government at the highest level has established this, at all other places, this is bound to happen. So I think it's an act in progress, but the foundation is extremely solid. And when the fountainhead changes, the water in the pipe will continue to leak for some time. But when the fountainhead of corruption stops at the central government level, I think the impact will be inevitably felt by everybody. So I do think that we are moving towards a far less corrupt society. I think we are a democracy. We have been corrupt for very long, so I don't think corruption is going away completely. But I think the way we are going, there is some promise.
I think you make a very valid point. I think I recognize that it takes time. Once you unclog the pipe, it takes a while for this flow to resume and things like that. And one of the important things I think many of the entrepreneurs here and all the people are looking at it, crony capitalism is not only about competition, it's also about corporate governance. And in India for a long time, the investor class, particularly the small investor, has felt that he had not been getting a deal. One of my friends nicely put it, the promoters never lose money, only the public lose money. Tell me what's happening in the corporate governance area, which you think that this government and others are doing to improve the investor's position in India?
So one of the things I said is that several business houses are selling off assets. People who never thought they will be even questioned if they wanted a further bank loan. Today, the stock prices have been hammered, companies' managements have been taken from them, and I don't want to mention some famous, infamous names about in this case, but it's happening in a big way. Let me tell you about this corporate governance. Sometimes the minority protection law in India, which is being practiced more and more, requires, like most advanced countries, and maybe even more rigorously, that the management cannot participate in any resolution that interests them. Sometimes this has very, very difficult situations. One of the situations was that one of the major Tata companies had promised an employee, because they brought somebody from overseas, that we will pay you a certain salary. The shareholders rejected the resolution. This is the power that's starting to happen. And the Tatas then had to pay the gentleman out of their private company called Tata Sons. So there are examples of this kind that are happening today. So I think, as I said, we are moving in that direction, nowhere that we have reached.
So I think we're moving in the right direction.
We are moving absolutely in the right direction.
As an investor, there is also a whole talk about foreign institutional investors and foreign direct investment taking place in India. All the talk is about Narendra Modi suggesting inviting foreign investment into India. What is happening in that front? Do you think that we would be able to attract the kind of money that China had been able to attract, Thailand has been able to attract, and we will be able to also succeed in that kind of an investment boom?
China is a category by itself. Okay. So I don't want to talk about China. But I think in India, since we are coming from 10 years of difficult period where there was so much disbelief in India, it is taking some time. But you're already seeing very serious automobile investment. You're seeing a lot of services, for example. In every kind of service, you're seeing money come in. In financial services, insurance, banking, of course, the floodgates have opened. But even in areas like retail, etc., Amazon, we had Flipkart announcing $1 billion sale. On the same day, Amazon announcing $1 billion investment in the country. So I think things have started to happen. On the ground, one must understand that it's a slowing down world. The demand shrinkage is definitely there. And therefore, until capacities get used up, new capacity cannot come up. The businessmen are not, working for the headlines. They have to work for profits and feasibility. So I think that bend we will make at some point of time. But in the services and other areas, you're seeing very serious FDI.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I'm going to open up for the questions to the audience. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the questions here, so I think I have to probably read there.
Why didn't you read the question to me, sir?
Because for some reason it's not coming up.
Okay.
So
I stand up and read?
Yep, let me turn around and I think we'll... Yep, I tried both ways, it's not doing it.
So let me start with the Brazil question. So I must answer the questions with the highest votes,
Yeah.
right?
How does India distinguish
Current
itself from
government,
other
great
BRIC?
work or great PR?
Yep.
Wonderful question. You need both. Sometimes the PR is ahead of the work, and sometimes work is ahead of PR. It's essential part of a government to do PR. Sometimes, when we speak to the government, we think their PR is not good enough. In India, the PR abroad may be much better. So I think it's a fair situation at this point of time.
Can you get the other questions? Unfortunately, whichever way I slide, it doesn't come. So let's bring it up back, the other questions. And
how does India distinguish itself? Oh, massively. If you look at Brazil, it's a largely commodity resource country. When the commodity resources, for example, oil, coffee, soybeans, etc., prices fall, the country is in serious trouble. Brazil went into serious trouble. Second, institution building. Over the last 30 years, India has built serious institutions. Brazil and all have not. So I think there are many, many differences. The diversity. If you look at just if you look at the constitution of index in Brazil and in India, you find, I mean, we have one of the most diversified set of businesses that form the stock index. In Brazil, you will find that few companies are 50 or 60% of the index. So I think there are many, many differences between other countries. And so Russia and other Indonesia and etc. are not even worth talking about. Yeah.
Let's take the question about the
current
infrastructure.
Make in India and Startup India campaigns. Yeah. They are far from successful at this point of time. But as I said, it will take time. So I'm happy to give them time. I don't know whether they'll become successful or not. So I think the intersection of the global forces in demand speeding up and the government's ability. So as I said, that there are a lot of areas of where the government has to work. And one of them is creating confidence in the states. They have devolved a lot of right and money to the states, but they have to take that up and work with them. And that's also necessary for Make in India. And Startup India is happening already. So the idea is to, I was a part of a committee which dealt with this. So we have liberalized a lot of laws. And so we recognized that there were only two clusters in India, the Powai cluster in Bombay and the Koramangala cluster in Bangalore, where a lot of startups were happening. And now there are several initiatives to take this startup culture around the country. So, half a dozen other clusters have been formed, where incubators, accelerators, and things like that are coming up. So I think that's much better.
So when those students come back, they'll have a welcome mat.
I just saw a lot of hands go up that they have businesses back home to go to. So if they want to get into startups, fantastic.
Let's talk about this infrastructure in India, which is the infrastructure supporting. It has historically been a big issue in India, infrastructure, roads, railways, ports, and every other infrastructure. What do you think of that?
I mean, the infrastructure deficit is very well known. And I think what they inherited was a tremendous mess on power, on coal, on roads, on railways, sector after sector. And for example, the progress on transmission, the progress on coal mining, the progress on power generation, the progress on road building is in geometric progression. From some 3 odd kilometers a day, you're up into somewhere in the teens already. And so also on the changes in the railways, changes in the power generation. I mean, today, India has no energy deficit. We have peak power deficit. This is on this demand as stated. There's a long way to go. There's something very interesting. I sit on a board of a company, and the last board meeting, he was very upset. He said, what happened? He said, one reform which was announced almost 7-8 years ago, that the big boys, the big industries, consuming more than 1 megawatt of power, now no more will be able to buy from the state distribution company, and they have to buy from the open market. He says, that makes a difference of 50 crores in a year. I said, you have to pay. If we have to create 24/7 power for every home and every village, this is what has to happen. So there were a lot of hidden things like this which are being ferreted out and enforced.
That's great.
So I think, yeah.
Okay.
Indian economy will be based on Chinese economy, based manufacturing and exports.
Yep.
Now, I think India is probably uniquely positioned that it has a very large domestic economy, something like 85%. The external sector, which is import, export, and services, etc., is a very small part of our economy. And for a long time to come, this is going to be one of the biggest consumption stories in the world. Today, China is struggling because they don't have a domestic market. America is doing better because they have a large domestic market. And the Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the tiger countries, and China, because of the dependency on export markets, are suffering. So India is not at all on the Chinese track. India is a unique model, more like US. I think it's we are only $2 trillion against several trillions of US, but we will be comparable only to US, I think, in 5 to 10 years' time.
Okay, let's think about the real estate market. There is something about India's real estate future, looking at the new Modi government. There seems to be some conversation. You also mentioned real estate. Is that a big market going to be?
So Indian real estate is one of the most suffering markets, and as they bring in more regulation, in real estate market will improve, because a transparent market always improves, is our experience. But currently, Modi and real estate are not known to be friendly to each other. People in Gujarat know that very well.
Okay. Okay, let's take another question. Yeah. Well, that's the question about India being morally and ethically bankrupt. I'm quite happy to open it up.
I think it's a reflection on all of us. I mean, the landmass is not corrupt. It is the people who are corrupt. And I must share a painful story. For some of the other initiatives that I have, people do try and come and tell me good stories. And at one of the parties, someone brought a bureaucrat who was working in the States and said, look, fantastic work this man has done. He had made 150 villages in his block mosquito-free. And that was fantastic. So I got talking to him. And after the conversation, all the goody-goody things, but he says, Vallabh Bhai, let me tell you one thing. If I write a book about India, the first line I will write is, Indian people are bogus. I was not ready for this. I said, why do you say that? He said, while I was trying to convert these villages, making these villages mosquito-free, so this involved that, okay, he went to each house and, used a safety tank or a septic tank, and, so how all the water would drain into that tank. If there is no water logging, there are no mosquitoes. It's as simple as that. He said, there was so much skepticism in this village guy. Government ka banda, if this government fellow has come to me and is wanting to do something, there must be some problem somewhere, and what do I make of this guy? So the talk that his children will be healthy, they will be healthy, etc., etc. So I think this is a major issue, and what prevents us from people recognizing it as a superpower, I think this lack of confidence in ourselves, and probably lack of character to some extent. So I completely agree with that.
Okay, so let me give the last word to you. So circling back to where we started, we seem to be having our moment in time. That's what you say, in terms of becoming economic superpower.
We've been moving towards that for a long time. I think we are still moving, but there are a lot of difficulties. For example, the social justice. I mean, most people, I'm going to make a presentation to, our university Flame, to its faculty, and do you know India? Do you know what is the social status, economic status of the majority of the countrymen? People don't. It's just a statistic. And we are so obsessed with what we are getting and the delays in what we want to get. So I think we need to do a lot for our rural India and people who are not so fortunate. We need to do a lot to make a connection between the essential ethos of our people, whether it is culture, religion, etc. Because there was this inherent peace and happiness that we had, and people are not always able to relate to what is being done. And therefore, by giving them freedom and different models, they can choose what they want to do instead of being forced, a model being forced on them. Given all those challenges, if we continue to just get out of Indians' way, as I think was Narasimha Rao, and you were involved with the Narasimha Rao government, that's what we need to do. So I think this declogging the pipe and extending the pipe to where it has not gone, to the rural India, to the farmer and the unorganized sector, I think I see a good prospect that we could be a superpower.
So I can go and tell my friend that India's future is bright.
Indeed, because I think some of the social features of India, for example, are we an inclusive society? Are we a diverse society? We are. Are we a noble society? To become a superpower, let me give an example. Did Russia bring good to many, many countries in the world? Is Japan a superpower? Third largest economy, we never think of them. So to have this sovereignty, to have this independence, to have an image where we wish everybody good, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and so on, India has always wished everybody good. All these features are necessary to become a superpower. So I do see prospects.
We put India in the same league as the United States, wishing the world well.
We will overtake US one day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Great conversation.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhansali and Professor Rangan, for a mesmerizing discussion on the macro trends in the Indian economy and its implications for Indian businesses. These learnings will definitely help us look at business and entrepreneurial opportunities from a truly holistic perspective. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with a memento to remind you of the good times with BAPS in India Symposium.
Thank you.
Who is this? Thank you very much. This is really cute.
Thank you.
Really cute.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
It's time now for a quick coffee break. We should come back as soon as possible because we have an incredible closing keynote with Mr. VG Siddhartha, the founder of Cafe Coffee Day, right after the break. So grab a coffee and get yourself back in here really quickly. Thank you, guys.